The news broke overnight that the man responsible for the shooting at Brown University and likely the shooting and killing of a university professor at MIT was found dead in a storage facility of a self-inflicted gun wound. I say that for you, not as part of my kitchen podcast to sensationalize the news, but to draw your attention to some parallels that I am seeing over three recent mass shooting attacks carried out at the hands of people who are immigrants to the nation of where they carried out their crimes. Now, the reason why I'm pointing this out and the parallels is to the way that different countries respond. As you can expect, this administration promptly decided to shut down the diversity visa, which is a program that was started, I guess, in the 70s. I'm not quite sure, where they allow certain people from various different countries to come here because America is the land of opportunity. So we've had an altruistic humanitarian outlook on immigration to give back to others who want to come here for years and years and years. And it was discovered that the man who was responsible for the shooting and killing of those two students, rest in peace, is in the United States as account of a diversity visa, a lottery that he won during Donald Trump's first term. And so their response to mass shooting is to attack immigration, attack the person. And it does not make sense. You know why it doesn't make sense, even though they've done this? Because they also did this with the asylum applicants in asylum cases of Afghans when it was discovered that the man who shot and ended the life of one National Guards person and critically injured another one is the United States based on our asylum laws. It was granted asylum during Donald Trump's first term, and their response is to shut down asylum for all Afghans and ignore the data and facts that say that close to 100% of the people who've committed mass shooting of unrelated folks, because we know they have shooting in the hood, have been American-born, mainly white males. The data and stats show statistically that people who are immigrants or migrants are less likely to commit violent crime compared to natural-born Americans or green card holders, people here permanently. That it is a fallacy that immigrants are more likely to be deviant criminals. That's just something that's a cultural word, talking point of the Republicans. They've used it for years. The Trump administration, Donald Trump himself have gone in on that false narrative and have used it to govern. Now, data and stats show that if you're really interested in policy, there's one item that's a through line, and it is the gun. And we see how one other nation that experienced a crime recently at the hand of an immigrant, the Bondi Beach shooting during a Hanukkah celebration, was carried out by, according to reports, a father and son duo that got their guns legally. And both of them, I believe they're Pakistani. I don't want to malign the country, but I believe they are Pakistani natives that were in Australia. And Australian government chose to respond by looking at the gun laws. They said, we're going to clamp down to see how were they able to get access, where can we tighten up the loopholes, how can we make sure this doesn't happen again, because unlike the United States, which is the number one nation across all other developed industrial quote-unquote first world nations, I hate using that terms, that has we have a gun problem. We have an industrial prison complex. We have that issue here in the United States. Other countries don't have it. One of the reasons is they don't allow their civilian population to have access to weapons of mass destruction and weapons of mass casualty as we do here. The Second Amendment is not absolute, no matter what anyone tells you. How do you know the Second Amendment is not absolute if anyone were to tell you that, or you bump into some MAGA in the wild saying that? There's several reasons why. One, the Second Amendment is an amendment. So the fact that there are amendments to the Constitution means that it was not meant for those the Constitution to be static and not change and evolve over time. And the fact that one of the amendments, the 14th Amendment, actually corrects something that's in the Constitution, which gives people who are black lack of their personhood and make them only 3/5 of a person and denies them citizenship. So that alone tells you that the Constitution was always meant to be a living, breathing, evolving thing. The other reason why you know the Second Amendment is not absolute is because we absolutely have restrictions on it. We register guns. You cannot be a child and own a gun, so we have an age limits on guns. We restrict people who previously had felonies or gun charges who just came out of jail from accessing guns. And some states have these laws that say if you have been had a domestic violence incident and you threaten the life of your partner, that we can actually take away your guns because we see the stats and data. So we have actually used data. We've actually legislatively restricted guns. Our court system have also supported and interpreted the Second Amendment to say that no, there are restrictions, it's intention. Also, the other thing you should know that when the Second Amendment was written and it said, a well-regulated militia, we didn't have a United States Army. Since then, but also in that document, there was groundwork for establishing a United States Army. So they knew at some point we wanted a national defense force. And so while they were grafting it to allow Second Amendment militia, they also knew that at some point there was going to be a national army, and I'm sure they interpreted that national would supersede. How do you know that? Because you can't own a tank. There's certain weapons that are super, like a bazooka, you cannot own. They're just something restricted to use by just the United States military. So that's a restriction. Another reason why the founders never intended for the Second Amendment to be absolute is the fact that if you were to draw out and do a seance and summon the spirit of Patrick Henry or Benjamin Franklin or George Washington or Ben Franklin, all the folks who signed, the founders, from the original founders to those who were part of the amendments, and you summon their spirit, the majority of them would say, no, we never intended for that militia right to help you defend your property against the tyranny of the government coming at you with your musket. We never intended that to be a tool to let citizens mass, unalive, kill, I'm going to say those words, fellow citizens in rapid fire out of grievance, out of whatever personal thing is going on for them. That was not the intent. So if you look at the intent, they did not intend the use of mass weapons of casualty to be used by citizens. That was definitely not their intent, if you want to be looking at the intent of the founders. And yeah, that's great. And then also the other reason, the final incident, you can't in one breath says Second Amendment is absolute. It has to be the way it was by the founders' intention, while at the same time want Donald Trump to be able to tweak the 14th Amendment, to tweak the part of the Constitution that says that people who are born here are entitled to their bloodline citizenship. The Trump administration could say, yeah, unless your parents are undocumented, then you don't get that. That would be allowed in the executive. And that's why I don't think, some people say, I think the Supreme Court's going to change it. The Supreme Court absolutely is not. If the Supreme Court gives Donald Trump the power to change the Constitution by executive order, you know what that does? Because he's on his way out. If they say that, you know what the next Democratic president is? They can just say, we're going to accidentally, by executive order, take out Clarence Thomas, Alito, and all the conservative seats by executive order. You're saying they can do it by executive, that's why they're not going to do that. They're essentially is like, yeah, anyway. So yeah, that's the argument for it. But the end of the day is you have the option to use culture wars to govern, which the Trump administration does, and it does often, or you can actually use common sense and use the data and facts and analysis and plug in the loopholes. That's what Australia is doing. But it's easy and convenient. For years and years and years, Republicans have told the workers that the reason for your problems are these other people, these migrants, these people of color. They're getting benefits. They're taking stuff away from you. And they're doing that while they're giving their friends tax relief, regulatory relief, allowing the biggest businesses to run amok, to not be restricted by regulations, by environmental, by anything that protects you. The party, I know people do the both sides. There's only one party that's protecting the labor unions, give you fair prices for your wages, that's going to make sure there's regulations to protect the people and stuff like that. There's only one side. There's no both sides. So, but for some reason, the Republicans in the red states are constantly able to use culture wars to govern, and y'all continue to let them. When you look at it, your life is not made better by any of their policies. Donald Trump's not done anything. All he has is a policy of cruelty. That's it. Cruelty to people who they've decided on one side or the other side about culture wars. You don't want that, because the minute there's a Democratic president, that they can just do the same thing, and you're definitely not going to want them to say all MAGAs are criminals. We're going to take away your license from all MAGA, take away all your guns, defund all the churches, and then sideline them, because that's what you guys are greenlighting when you say that Donald Trump can do what he's doing to people who are on the other side of your culture war. But anyway, I digress. I just wanted to share this is my kitchen podcast, my third episode. We can discuss below, but there's a choice. And Operation 2/3 is my one-woman campaign to get a 2/3 veto-proof majority so we can get common sense gun control. So check that out at jjlegals.com, where you can get a Know Your Rights card. You can get a Trump-era survival kit that's going to give you scripts, that's going to give you access to get the cases so you can be a DACA queen like me, where it's going to give you all the things that you need to know your rights cards, over 14 of them, at jjlegal.com, and you get on my newsletter, and I give you all these news and information in your news box. JJ Legal, each one teach one. Let's discuss below. Share this video so more people know.